So Tabitha Mpamira is a mental health therapist, activist, motivational speaker, and consultant on sexual and gender-based violence with a long working history in the mental health care industry. In 2015, Tabitha founded EDJA, which is now known as Mutera Global Healing, to provide free medical, legal, and mental health services to survivors of sexual assault in East Africa. So it is my honor to turn it over to you, Tabitha. I'm looking forward to today's session.
Thank you so much, Ansley. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all again. It's Friday. Yay, we're almost there. I can tell the few people I can see, everybody's excited, and it's kind of early. So, well, for today, I'll try to go over what we talked about last time really quickly for anybody who's joining us for the first time, just so we're not losing you. But also try to do more grounding and a little bit more tools or hopefully skills. And so for those of you who are not on camera and you're able to, it would be really nice to see everybody's face this morning. If not, that is okay too. We will go into small rooms maybe twice this time around to kind of have a little bit more sharing time. I think people really enjoyed that. We didn't do too much last time because there was a little bit more of the didactic aspects that we don't have today. So that is a quick setup for what I am hoping to cover today. If you didn't join us last week, we ended on tracking, where we get to check in 1 to 10, where how is my mind, how is my heart, how's my body. So we are going to check in on that real quick after our grounding, just to give you an idea if you're open to sharing of where you are, so I can prepare you for that. Before I jump in and get all started, if you have any questions or something you would want to hear more about today, or something you're curious about, anything at all, just throw it in the chat, so I can make sure I cover that as well, or that I can answer some questions if you went home and you wanted to learn more, or you're curious about something else, as long as it's all around self-care and it helps you to do that more. Feel free to throw that in the chat or send it privately to me if it's something you don't want everybody else to see. We'll definitely make space for more questions and connections. So with all of that, we will start with a grounding as usual. And as you remember, if you were here last week, we can't do too much when our brain is not here. So that's the point of grounding, is to bring our nervous system, our mind, our body in the present moment, so we can show up for ourselves and each other. And so we will, if you feel comfortable, feel free to, yes, thanks, Ansley. Also drop in where you're calling in from and kind of what role you play in this space, if you didn't see that in the chat, who you are, where you're calling in from, and organization you work with, and what role that is for you, so we can get to know who's in the room. And it's a much smaller room today than it was Monday, so that might give us more time to talk and learn better. So, okay. So wherever it feels comfortable for you, if you feel like you need to turn off your camera, or you just want to find a place to check or close your eyes, however you feel that will give you more presence, let's go ahead and do that, closing your eyes. And for those of you who are not comfortable doing that, just find a place that you can stare. If you're in an office that's busy, that you don't feel like you're distracted in any way. And so with that, if it feels good for you, sometimes I like to put one hand on my heart and another one on my belly, and that just kind of gives me a connection. The hand on my heart and the hand on my belly reminds me to breathe deeply from my diaphragm. So if my belly's rising and falling, I'm doing that right. If I feel like it's my chest that's rising and falling, that's more of a shallow breath. So that's the purpose for that. And so now that you are there, I want you to take a moment and let yourself feel the feet on the ground, your body in a chair or bed or wherever you're sitting. And take a moment to just come into your body, in your space. And your brain is probably going to start coming up with all kinds of ideas of things you forgot or where you need to be or what else. Let it do what it does. And just gently bring your attention back to your body and where you are. So we're going to take a breath in through the nose, really slowly. And hold. And then letting it out really slowly and emptying it. And as you breathe out, letting yourself sink in a little bit deeper. On this next breath, I want you to bring your awareness to your mind. How is my mind doing? Awareness, not judgment. Is it quiet? Is it loud? Neutral? And finding that number, 1 to 10. How is my mind? Breathing in. Hold. Breathing out. Now, how is my body doing? Starting from your head, shoulders, the back, arms, legs, all the way to the toes. How is my body doing? Breathing that in, letting it all go. Sinking in a little deeper. Let's check with the heart this morning. How am I feeling? How is my heart? When was the last time you checked in for you? Again, 1 to 10. Breathing in. And letting it out through your mouth really slowly. Emptying it all out. Giving yourself a little bit of space. Now, whenever you're ready, opening your eyes, turning your camera back on if it's off, and taking a moment to look at everyone in this room who has taken the time and space to show up for themselves. And as we had last time, self-care is collective care. So when we show up for us, we're showing up for each and everyone we're sharing space with. So thank you all for showing up. Okay. Feel free to unmute and share. What number would you say, or put it in the chat? What would you say average number would be for you? 1 to 10, where are you right now? About a 6, 7.58, 7, all right, 7. Okay, 6. And every number is welcome, right? So it's nobody wins for being at a 10. It's awareness of where am I, and am I open and ready to show up for this? So this is a tool that can work in meetings, before you start a meeting, before you start a board meeting, anything that's going to be productive. So if everybody here was at a 3, anything I say would not get in, right? And so if you're at a 6 or 7 or 8, if anybody wants to share, what would it take if you wanted to? This is where agency comes in, right? I go by 3 things. There's awareness. That's the first part we do. Where am I? How am I doing? These 3 parts are connected, but they're also different, right? So we bring our awareness, and then agency. So once I know I'm at an 8, possibly mind was at a different number than body, then my agency says, well, what do I need? If I wanted to move my body into a, let's say, I'm gonna pick on you, Ansley, you have a 6. So if you wanted your body to be more at a 7 or 8, or your number overall, in this moment, what do you feel like you would need? Or what got it to a 6? Let's start there.
I should probably mute my emails right now. Just be in like do not disturb mode so that I'm not getting email notifications because I feel like that's constantly pulling my brain away, to different projects and things going on. And then maybe physically, I would like to do a little stretch. I
Yeah.
haven't stretched yet this morning, so I think physically that would probably be helpful.
I think that would be helpful for a lot of us. So just like that, you already know what it would take to get to the next thing versus just keep going. So maybe we can all do a stretch. Who needs a stretch? I need a stretch. All right, there we go. Who needs one? Or what part of your body needs one? And now collectively with Ansley, we can help her get to a better number. And just by community, we all can get to a higher number. Anybody else wants to share if they're aware of what would it take to get to a little bit higher if they needed to? Or what made you get to the number you're at? More rest, Crystal? Yes, I'm with you. Hydration for me. I just noticed. I'm like, I did not drink my water this morning. Okay.
I'm trying to like kind of like what Ansley said. If you can give everybody a number, a note that says, please do not disturb Karen during these times, like that. Like your parents used to get a note to the teacher, like, please excuse them from the school, from the school. Like, I want that note. I want a note that says, please excuse Karen from work for the next 90 minutes. That's what.
And I think that note is on the phone. It's called Do Not Disturb, where nothing comes in. On the computer, we can turn off the emails, right? Those are the ways we can give ourselves that permission that even if we feel like we might not be able to ignore it, now we have little things in our spaces. I saw a post, somebody is in I think he's a college student in a big computer room, and he pinned a paper on his back that says, I do not have any self-control. I will talk until if anybody talks to me, I'll now walk away. So please do not talk to me. And his back is turned to the door. It's like, I like that because that's me. Then I'm not productive and I'm talking to everybody who's going by. So there you go. That's a tool we can use in our personal lives, in our spaces, in our work, if we're managing teams, if we're holding meetings, but even for ourselves. If you woke up and did that, or somewhere halfway through the day, or at the end of the day, at whatever time, what do I need? What does my mind, body need? And we'll be surprised at how sometimes those are little accessible things we need. And sometimes they're not things we can get. And so that also gives you agency to know and give yourself a little grace that, okay, maybe I can't do that now, but what can I do? Oh, I can do that later and show up for myself. All right. So that was a quick where we ended last time that we didn't get a chance to really go into detail of how we can use that for ourselves. And so just real quick as a reminder for those, well, for all of us, but before we really start, I keep saying before we really start, we already started. But just a quick reminder of our agreements from last week. If anybody has anything new that would help you feel a little bit safer or feel present, these were some of our agreements last week: confidentiality, sharing time, I statements, respect, space for complexity, dynamic. And first and foremost, that should be number one, prioritizing self-care. So at any point that you need to step away or do anything else, this would be the time. So if anybody has any additions, feel free to put it in the chat or interrupt us at any point, and we can do that. All right. So now that we are on that, I want us to, we had homework that came through the email of a wellness plan. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at that. And if not, I will put up a few of those questions, so just so you can be reminded. And so what the wellness plan was, for those who might have seen it or didn't look at it, was going through all these questions to really get to know how you are when you are at your best. Who am I? How do I talk? How do I feel? How is my home environment? all the little things that we don't realize are indicators of our internal state. And so, oh, thank you. And so you had a chance, and I know most of us might have glanced at it and didn't really do it. That's fine. You can go back at it at any time, back to it anytime. But the other reason I give this to us as a homework is I've heard this story be told, so I don't know how true it is, but it matches my point. So I'm repeating it, of how they train people in the Treasury Department. So if anybody's in the counterfeit department, that they never show them the different types of counterfeits. Instead, they really train them on what the real thing is. They get the money, they get to learn how it smells, how it feels, how it looks, what is it used, how, if you want to burn it, what does it look like if you had to wash it, right? So they really get to know what the real thing is, that if they ever come in contact with a counterfeit, they don't have to know what a counterfeit looks like to know that it is fake, because they know what is real. So the idea around this wellness homework was that you get to know yourself so well when you're feeling your best that a tiny little thing goes off the radar. You catch it before it's too bad. You catch it before it's a migraine, before it is a vertigo or whatever illness comes out of not taking care of ourselves, right? So it might feel like, well, who cares what colors I wear or how I communicate? Those are all indicators of, before this service engine comes on, that light comes on, that you catch it, and it's easier to solve prior, before it gets too bad. So for those who are able to do it, and those who are not able to, we'll still have some questions. These were some of the questions on that, and Ansley has put that in the chat. And so what we're gonna do, Shay's gonna put us in groups of 2, and we will discuss, and don't put me in a group, Shay, just people, who the participants here. And then what we're gonna discuss in that small group is, even if you didn't do it, you can look through quickly and kind of answer that for yourself, but kind of something, whatever you feel comfortable sharing from your list of wellness indicators. How do you know you are at your best? If you did the exercise, how was that? Or how is it doing it with your partner? If you didn't do it and you're doing it just in that moment, you're just picking out one question to answer, what might surprise you on when you're really well versus when you're not? What are those indicators? And then one thing you had to do as well was doing something for yourself to meet your needs. Like what do I need? So from Monday to Friday, did you take an intentional moment to do something for you? What do I need? So those will be the questions, and I'll put them in the chat after we get in those spaces. So any questions about what you're going to discuss with if anybody is in a room that they don't feel they have the ability to have a conversation, let us know so we don't put you in a room and somebody's stuck with someone who can't talk. But otherwise, take it away, Shay. You can put us in pairs of 2. It's just, there's so much there. I think with each one of these, like I said, most of these workshops, we sometimes do 3 days of this, and that we take the time to really tease it apart. But we have 90 minutes, so we're doing this.
Much time.
Yeah. Anybody want to share what came out? I know, Cindy, you got cut off while you were saying how kind of the 3 ways of what you're sitting with in terms of that.
I was just saying I really appreciated sorting out what is like resourcing and filling in what is what is coping, which is also important, but they're different. And also that I just want to spend some more time really reflecting on where those came from and which ones I want to stick with and which ones I don't need to. So I just appreciated this exercise. Haven't done it before.
Wonderful. Yes. I'm big on why do I do what I do, and not keeping those intergenerational things that are passed on. Some are wonderful and healing, and others not so much. And they were doing the best they could, and we are automatically doing what we know how. Yes, Kathleen.
Yeah, I was with Yesenia, and I think we both thought that, part of a coping mechanism was kind of taking a step back and not, you know, not allowing ourselves to be paralyzed by what we're hearing, but at the same time, both of us feeling that can also feel like you're stepping back in a way that's not comfortable for the person that you're speaking to, that they'll feel like you want that distance. And I think another question for us was sometimes the blurred line between a coping and a resourcing method. And if you use a coping method a lot, does that become a resourcing method? Or so there's a little bit of questions around that for us.
Absolutely. I love that question. And that's where I said both coping could be a resourcing tool as well, and they can be interchangeable. But coping is more of in that moment survival. Most of the time not intentional. It can be intentional, right? But is it going to where it blurs the line, or it crosses the line into resourcing, is that it can be long-term sustainable way that I can return to over and over to give me that stability, right? So an example, we'll stick with Netflix. So maybe after a long day, I can watch an episode or two to just distress, get disconnected as a coping thing for that long day. But that might not be a good resource because it does not give me long-term effects toward regulating my nervous system, right? So that's one example of one that can be coping, but not a resourcing one. And then when we think about breathing, right, that taking that step back, like if I'm really activated, something I'm hearing is really difficult, I can step back and take 3 breaths. That's what research shows that it takes to move you from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. And in that moment, coping with that exact moment is taking that breath or doing those 5 senses. And then I'm good enough to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm well enough. And then that could be an intentional way of waking up every morning and doing my breathing exercises. And in the afternoon and having a schedule or having a routine, then that coping through breathing can also become a resourcing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's good.
So the resourcing is adaptive, it's long-term, it's intentional, and it's beneficial to your well-being, mind, body, and soul. Coping can be just numbing for a short time, just so I can get through this and survive. It can be that glass of wine at the end of the day. But then if I need a glass of wine in the middle of the day and I need a glass of wine in the morning to just get through the day, that's no longer adaptive. So that cannot be a resource. Yeah, right. It can be a coping thing, but not a resourcing thing. If that. And so for those of you who have children or even in managerial ways, my kids, we didn't do timeouts. We did resourcing spaces, and each one designed their own resourcing table. So when they're really activated, I'm activated, they're activated. Nobody's going to have a useful conversation about what they did wrong or what they need to think about. Instead, I would send them to a resourcing table and they do something to calm down. And that gives me space to calm down. And now we can really talk about discipline or what they did wrong or correcting behavior. And so even in workspaces, that is something can be incorporated, a resource room. During workshops, I always recommend when we're in person, we need to have a resourcing room where somebody can go to if they're triggered, or if during the day, for you all who work with really difficult stories, where can I escape to and do something for me that doesn't feel like I'm ignoring people, or right, what to your example, Kathleen, I can walk away from a phone call from a client and say, I'll be right back, and walk into this room that is specific for coping, or even if it's a cubicle, it's like, maybe there are some little reminders or breathing space. So it's nice and, or it smells good, whatever it is that works for that environment, the culture, the people, that it's like, okay, I can walk in here and I know what this room is for. Anyway, that's kind of the idea around these. So internally, I'm really rushing myself. I don't know if you all are getting this energy because I'm like, oh, there's so much more, because I wanted to also touch on what comes with coping and resourcing is also boundaries and what boundaries look like. And I know those are all words now that have become the go-to for influencers and for social media. And it's like, oh, I got my boundaries. Now you can call me after 8. It's like, okay, is that really? And so when we hear boundaries, we usually, a lot of us, so I want to touch on resilience and boundaries in the next 26 minutes. And I want to do it in a way that still there's something to take away, but also maybe I'll end up sharing this this PowerPoint, because that might give, it doesn't give you too much because a lot of it is more for images, but we'll see what we can do. So resilience and boundaries. So when I think of boundaries, or maybe anybody who's willing to share, when I say boundaries, what do you hear? Because that's the new fad. Everybody has boundaries now. What do you hear when I say that? What do you think of?
I guess an example is I put on my do not disturb for the duration of this meeting. So sort of like an email boundary that I won't get any notifications, and I can, if I'm here, basically, and not being pulled away.
Mm-hmm. So kind of being a gatekeeper for your own time, maybe. All right. Oh, share you. Okay, we couldn't hear you. Go ahead.
I think for me, boundaries are kind of like my personal rules of how I want to be treated, like what I'm comfortable with. Those are what my boundaries are.
Yeah, I like that. I want to be treated. Yes. And so a lot of people, I love both your answers. Most people, when we say boundaries, they're thinking of this wall that keeps everybody out from their space. And when I think of a wall, it doesn't only keep somebody out, it also keeps you in, right? So it disconnects us from people. And then based on culture, a lot of people think boundaries like, oh, that would never work. I think it's a comedian I saw who says she doesn't have boundaries, she has browndaries because she's brown. And it's like there's no such thing as boundaries in that community. When something is going on, everybody's in it. It's in your business. And that's kind of similar to ours. So there's like a cultural context too to all of these things. And so for me, when I think of boundaries, the one definition I really love is the distance at which I can love you and myself simultaneously. And so what that looks like is if I am staying late so that I can take care of your situation, and that's getting in the way of my well-being for whatever that is, there is that that distance if it's larger, right? But then also staying flexible enough, right? So if I say my boundary is I'm done working at 5, I don't get a phone call, you can call me, you can do this, and my coworker is stuck at work and or can't find their keys, and I'm like, nope, it's a coworker I can pick up. Too bad, I guess you're going to be stuck or whatever, right? The rigidity of the wall is like, no, that's my cutoff after 5. I don't care what's going on. Not leaving the space for emergencies, for life to happen. And then that gets rigid in a way that's not helping anyone in your community. So I think of boundaries as a gate versus a wall, a door that I get to choose when I open it or close it. So if I say I'm done working by 5 for whatever reasons that nobody needs to know, but then there's an emergency, I get to decide that this day I'm opening the door to coming in late for these reasons, but that doesn't mean it stays open. That means I can close it at the end of that day, right? So with Oh, all of that. Okay. I wanted to quick. I get to talking and forget I had these all on somewhere. So the distance which I can love you and me simultaneously, and that really gets challenging in family dynamics, in work dynamics. What does that look like? Right. So there are 4 different types of boundaries. Emotional boundaries, I think I touched on that. I'm not comfortable talking about my weight, or I'm not comfortable answering that question about my mental health, whatever that is. Time boundaries. This is the flexibility piece. Maybe like, I can't help you today, but I have time on Tuesday. So I'm not saying I'm never going to help you, but due to what's working for me, here's how I can, right? Topic boundaries, whatever feels comfortable for you. If you're doing this, I'm not coming. And Thanksgiving is coming up. So a lot of these boundaries are going to come in handy for different family dynamics of what shows up and what happens. Then there's the physical, obviously, around the either touch, space, you name it. And that also can really be important to identify what those are. And so in what we set for ourselves at home is different from what we set at work, family, friends. There's some people who have a key to that gatehouse, the proverbial gate, that they come and go as they please. And we know what happens when we set those things tend to really get harder for people who are used to having access to you in ways that you're no longer letting them. And how do we navigate that, right? So with that, I want to open it up, and then we're going to end on resilience. But I just wanted to kind of, I know I feel like I'm going through this really fast, and these are really large topics, but how boundaries show up for your work in the migrant services spaces, but then also for you individually, what have been some of the challenges or expectations? And I think we're small enough. We'll just share in here for the next 5 minutes or so from what I just shared with you. What are your thoughts? What's coming up for you? What is challenging about these boundaries?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. If I can ask a question, Tabitha, how sacrosanct are boundaries? I mean, when you're managing people, or even when you're interacting with clients or sometimes their time boundaries are completely out of sync with what you genuinely feel is appropriate as boundaries. And how do you show respect for the concept of boundaries, but also recognize that some people's boundaries are not working in some level, for you or for the organization you're with, or I just wonder about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are struggling with that, especially around working with Gen Zers who are all about boundaries. They're like, but also culturally. Yeah, I remember moving back to Rwanda to work there, and somebody shows up a whole hour late for a meeting. And there's no apology, it's just expectation. You're gonna sit there until they show up. And that's their thing, right? And what do I do with that? And I think that's where that flexibility, transparency, and why some of these things have to be institutional and systemic. So as a person, I can say my days are really packed. Maybe first time this happens, I can give grace. Life also happens, right? If somebody does this, I'm making a lot of assumptions about how you all do this work, but maybe some people don't have ways to do the things the way you do it, or to be online and stay online, or show up to the meetings because lack of transport or inequalities and all of that, right? So that can get really nuanced. So for the purposes of us here, I don't know if Kathleen, if I'm answering this well, I think it comes back to that open communication. And then if it's a one-on-one issue that or is late, you've planned for 30 minutes, I'm showing up 15 minutes late. Now you only have 15 minutes to cover the things you wanted to cover. And this becomes not one time. Then how can we have that discussion of, this is why this is important to me. Why do you feel like it makes it so hard for you to show up on time? What are the barriers, right? We all usually jump to a lot of assumptions. We all assume we are coming in from the same place. We have same access. We have, if I'm here, why aren't you, right? Sometimes that's our assumption that we're not even connecting to, versus what's getting in the way, or what can I do better, differently, that we are each loving each other simultaneously. So if we stick to the meeting thing, that person might say, and we do a lot of meetings with people in all parts of Africa, and then they're not showing up, and you're sitting there, and it turns out some people have to walk miles to get to a cafe to get internet, and then I just walk up to my living room and click, and I'm there, and I'm like, they're not respecting my time, and now I'm mad, and they show up, and now my brain is like this, right? So it's like, what's getting in the way? How can we do this differently, that we're both loving each other simultaneously? We can do the work, and you're respecting my time, and I'm respecting the inequities. I don't know if that's a simplified way to think of the big question, right? So for each organization, they can determine what gets in the way of people not leaving on time. Many of us, nobody dies if we go home. Some of us, right? Very few of us, our jobs, somebody's life will end. So what's urgent? What's emergency? Those are also sometimes convoluted. What we have inherited from previous management, or the culture. Sometimes it's also very unintentional, carried on, of, we work till we're done working, and you don't complain about it, right? And then somebody else is, anyway, so does that?
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
So I think that question is, how can I love you or respect you, depending on what the situation is, and respect myself, my time, your time, simultaneously, and what's getting in the way. And when we come at it, people are more likely to be open about, I never thought of it that way, or I didn't feel comfortable sharing about my difficulties, about why I'm not doing that thing. So, all right. Yeah, anybody else wants to share about boundaries? Or any ones you have for yourselves? Yes, go ahead, Cindy.
I guess I'm trying not to take up too much space here, but I guess I also, in working with in a immigrant serving organization, and with a lot of our case managers are, and this is true in our town with a number of organizations, are immigrants themselves, which is awesome. A lot of identification there, and a lot of being in a community that you're serving. And I just wonder how other people set boundaries in those instances, or help other people set boundaries in those instances, to just not be totally overtaken by the barrage of need in a community.
Yeah. And anybody wants to share how you've done it, or respond to Cindy's? Oh, I saw Karina's getting closer. I thought you were gonna share something, so I waited. Okay. So, Cindy, so you're asking, how can we, when there are all these needs coming at us, what are some boundaries? How can we set those boundaries for ourselves?
And specifically, trying to hear maybe if anybody is on this call that's in a situation like that, where um, feeling part of a small community that you're um, a worker and serving, but you're also part of that community.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. People with lived experience definitely face differently. Yes, Karina.
No, I'm just telling, I was in the situation, I was very stressed. And then I have to go to therapy, and I have 2 ways of coping. So the time is very important. Have time for yourself, and then thinking that, I don't know, if that you can help the people near you, but you cannot solve the whole problem. So, and then if you are not there, there will be another person. So don't take the whole responsibility of other people's life. It's something that I was like, I'm always want to, okay, I solve like this, and Tere knows me, and I want to solve everything. But in a moment, I stop and thinking about, okay, if I'm not well, I cannot help the other one. So that's something that I'm still working, because sometimes okay, don't worry, I don't eat. And then, okay, I have to stop and eat at this hour, because if not, I can not eat. And at the night, I will eat on my whole fridge. So it's like a process. It's not, I think it's not immediately, but we can do it step by step. And the telephone strategy is, or that put it in like stop calls, working calls at one time, because if not solving today, there will be a tomorrow. So that's why.
I love that. Yes, Teresa. There is time.
Yes, my strategy for the new migrant is that I try to explain to the new migrant that he has a responsibility about that I don't have all the answer. That we don't have all the results for that support to them. That the situation is not for yesterday. But the new migrant think that I have this needed, I want this now and this moment. And say no. But sometimes you have the responsibility that you need to provide something if you need to do something. If you that has your part, I can help you try to navigate for this. And say, you not only the person I'm here, it's the thousands of people request the same services when the same situation. But you have responsibility to do something. Yeah, I have the phrase, the famous phrase, I have the macro way. I know I can do for inside the microwave in few minutes and has a solution. Mm-hmm. This is inside. You request something me, I need one decision. No, this is for yesterday. But you have now. And has not the clicked in 5 minutes and has you asylum paper. I have the 5 minutes and has you the job permission. I try that you have in the present moment, you have in the reality now. Thinking about that. And sometimes I'm very rude. Something to say, how you have rude? No. This is you thinking, what the reason that you coming here? But you have you need to do something for the something that you have the result. And has the part, but you have the responsibility that you do something. And try to educate the people. This is that your responsibility. Sometimes work, but you say, you not do that? Sorry. And has 25%, you have 75%. This is how I'm trying. You don't want it working in the process? Don't ask me why you don't have the result. But they all the time think, I need something when you're coming up right. And the last 6 months, why you do that? Why you request me? when you have the court in the 3 days? Why you ask me about the lawyer when you have 6 months here? It's your responsibility. And try the first that you understand that you is part of the process, not me, and has only the way, only part of the process. This is how I manage it and try. Sometimes working, sometimes not. But sometimes it's okay. I'm taking my feet out. This is how I manage it. Sometimes work, sometimes not.
Thank you, Teresa. All right. I hope we all, I hope I get to that place of those kind of boundaries, right? But what I got out of that is, one, you do the educational piece of what I can and can't do and what you are and are responsible for. I feel like that's part of that. And then there was that piece around what can be done now versus later, and what are the expectations and what are my abilities, and what's mine and what's yours. I think that's a big piece around self-care. Most of us want to hold everybody's stuff as our own, but including coping, resourcing, boundaries, resilience that we touched on last time, but we didn't quite get too deep into that part, is that some things are given to us and we don't question, we just keep doing and doing. And so even when we are showing up for people in this work, it's questioning what's mine and what's not. My mantra has been, I think I made a sticky note and put it nearby. It's like bless and release. What's not mine, I bless and release. So I'm not going home with somebody's stuff that I can solve. I do my best. And most of us, self-criticism asks, what did I do wrong? What can I do different? But self-compassion asks, what do I need? And so continually asking ourselves, what do I need to show up for me? What do I need to be well? Now that I know what well is for me, how do I maintain that? So the 3 pieces: awareness, coming into awareness of where I am, what's good for me; agency, what can I change, and accepting what I can't. And then lastly is action. What can I do to make it to that place that I want to be well? And those are kind of the 3 guiding principles around our self-care: awareness, agency, and action. And we are at time, unfortunately, but this has been such a wonderful space. I always wish we can do deeper and share more. Clearly, there's a lot of wisdom in this space, but it's been such an honor and privilege to share the little bit I've been able to share, and for trusting me with this work, and for all that you all do for immigrants everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to host you and have this space, both on Monday and on Friday. If anybody wasn't able to attend on Monday, I really encourage you to watch the video. I will send a follow-up email with all of the information, with links to both the recording from the first session and the second. I'm also quickly going to drop the CEC link. If you're a social worker or a mental health worker, you are eligible for continuing education credits. I believe, and I'll include this in my next email, some instructions for how to go about registering. If you haven't made an account with the Silver School of Social Work yet, you will have to make the account first and then re-click on the link, and then I believe you can actually apply for the credits. And so I will also be in touch with Ben, who helps us manage those, to help anybody troubleshoot those. So just send me an email. I'll drop my email in the chat box. So if you need, okay, registration for this event will begin on 10/28. So it looks like tomorrow it will open up so that folks can register. If you attended one, it's 1.5 credits. And if you attended both, it's 3. So sorry to get into logistics at the very end, but this was really great. And I hope that everybody enjoyed taking a time to ground themselves and learn these new techniques. And hopefully you learned something you can take with you in this work. So. All right, I'll leave this open for a couple more minutes so everybody can kind of grab information out of the chat as you need to, but we'll leave it there. Thank you so much again, Tabitha.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you all. Good luck and keep asking, what do I need?